My name is Diana, and there was a time when I believed my life was perfectly in order. I had a successful career as head of marketing, a loving husband named Bob, and a stable, comfortable existence. I was proud to be financially independent, diligently paying off our mortgage with my earnings. Family was central to us. Bob's younger brother, Nathan, and their mother, Judy, were constants in our lives. Their father had passed away some years earlier, making the brothers especially protective of their mom. Watching Bob's devotion to his family only deepened my affection for him. At first, Judy seemed genuinely fond of me. During family gatherings, we'd chat over coffee, and she often asked about my job in marketing. She'd nod with what seemed like genuine respect as she commented on the importance of my work. I cherished her approval, wanting to be a beloved part of Bob's close family circle. In those early years, our marriage was full of joyful family activities. Weekend barbecues, holiday feasts, and spontaneous game nights. I remember one particularly lively Thanksgiving at Judy's house, with laughter filling the air and conversations overlapping. "Pass the gravy, will you?" Bob's uncle would jovially call, and Judy would playfully retort, smiling as she passed the gravy boat. Surrounded by Bob's family, I felt a genuine sense of belonging. But an unsettling undercurrent surfaced during a New Year's Eve gathering at Judy's. While refilling my wine in the kitchen, I overheard her in the living room making a snide remark about what Bob's cousin Lori was wearing. Lori, a single mother, was struggling financially, and Judy's words were cutting. "That dress must have cost all of $10, she scoffed, implying Lori was out of her depth among those more financially secure. My heart sank with embarrassment for Lori. This wasn't the warm, welcoming family I thought I knew. Over time, the teasing that I'd brushed off as harmless revealed itself as something far crueler. Judy regularly huddled with Bob and Nathan, casting judgmental glances at other relatives and friends, whispering and snickering as they shared derisive comments. I felt the sting of this cruelty on Easter Sunday when Judy mocked another relative's new car. "Probably got it from the buy here, pay here lot," she speculated with a smirk. "She'll be paying it off until she's 70. I couldn't hold back. "Hey," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "Don't you think that's a bit much? Janet can probably hear you." The room went silent as Judy looked up at me with thinly veiled disdain. "Well," she replied sarcastically, "looks like we've offended your delicate sensibilities, Diana." Bob and Nathan exchanged uneasy glances. "I just think it's rude," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Why do you always have to put people down?" Judy's smile faded. "If you don't like it, you don't have to listen. Why don't you go sit somewhere else?" Feeling slapped, I turned to Bob, hoping for his support, but he only looked down. "Fine," I said tightly. "I will." After that day, family gatherings became a lonely ordeal. I'd sit by myself, nursing a drink, while Bob stayed glued to his mother's side. Occasionally, he'd send an apologetic glance my way, but he never came to sit with me. One evening, after an especially tense dinner, I felt the weight of this divide settle heavily between us. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer. "Why don't you ever stand up to her?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger. Bob sighed deeply, his hand running through his hair in distress. "She's my mother, Diana. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to tell her she's being mean," I said, my words sharp. "I want you to support me." But he never did. Over time, the tension grew unbearable. I started finding excuses to avoid family events, work emergencies, migraines, anything to escape the icy stares and whispered criticisms. Just when I thought things couldn't get more strained, life threw me a curveball. I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the pregnancy test, two pink lines glaring back at me. My heart pounded in my chest as I called for Bob, my voice trembling. He rushed to the bathroom door, worry written all over his face. Without a word, I handed him the test. His eyes widened in surprise, and he pulled me into an embrace. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe this baby could heal the rift between us. Maybe this new life would bring us closer, restore what we were losing. But the pregnancy was difficult from the start. I was plagued by constant nausea and a constant gnawing fear of miscarriage. My doctor prescribed bed rest, but as the weeks went on, my condition worsened. My eyesight began to deteriorate, another rare, potentially permanent complication. It soon became impossible for me to keep working. I had to quit my job. As I lay there, physically and emotionally drained, I felt more isolated than ever. I needed Bob's support, but he seemed to pull further away. He came home late most nights, claiming work demands or meetings with colleagues. More and more, I fell asleep alone, only waking to the sound of the front door closing late into the night. The day of my C-section arrived, and with my deteriorating eyesight, a natural birth was too risky. As I lay on the cold operating table, fear and excitement mingled in my chest. "Where's Bob?" I'd asked the nurse, my voice shaking. She gave me a sympathetic smile. "Your husband's in the waiting room, dear. He said he'd rather stay there." The surgery went smoothly, and soon, the sound of my son's first cry filled the room. As they placed him on my chest, an overwhelming rush of love took my breath away. But the moment of joy was short-lived. Later, in the recovery room, Bob finally appeared. His face was unreadable, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. "Look, Diana," he said, his tone sharp, "I've got to say something. This whole thing, it's not right." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" His frustration was palpable. Normal women give birth on their own without all this surgery crap. And men, we're not supposed to be here for this. We should be meeting our wives and kids at home, like in the old days. His words hit me like a physical blow. My heart sank as I processed his utter lack of empathy. Bob, the man I thought I knew, seemed so distant, so disconnected from the reality of what we had just gone through. I couldn't hold back any longer, but before I could speak, he cut me off. "Save it. I'm heading home. This place gives me the creeps." The next few weeks blurred into a haze of sleepless nights and endless feedings, with Bob rarely at home. When he was there, he barely helped with the baby. His presence seemed like a shadow, and when he did interact with our son, it was with frustration. One night, as the baby cried, Bob grumbled irritably, "Can't you quiet him down?" I was exhausted, my body still recovering from surgery, but I managed to respond, "I'm trying, Bob. He's teething. It's painful for him." Bob's patience was running thin. "You're always focused on the kid. What about me? What about what I need?" His words hit me like a slap. Here I was barely managing to get any sleep, still healing, trying to juggle everything. And he was upset because our intimacy had dwindled. I didn't know how to respond. As the months went by, Bob's dissatisfaction only deepened. One night, while I rocked our restless 7-month-old, Bob made an abrupt declaration. "You need to start working again." I looked at him stunned. "What about the baby?" "We'll get a nanny," he interrupted. "We can't keep going like this, Diana. We're running out of money." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that our baby needed me, that I wasn't ready to leave him yet, but the finality in Bob's voice left no room for discussion. Reluctantly, I began searching for a job. With my vision still impaired, it was a daunting task, but eventually, I found a role at a smaller firm. The salary was much lower than my previous job, but it was something. When I shared the news with Bob, his response was dismissive. "That's all we're paying a nanny for." His frustration was palpable. Tears pricked at my eyes. "I'm doing the best I can, Bob. It's hard with my vision still not fully recovered." He muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. And so began a grueling new chapter. Mornings were a rush to get to work, and every day I felt a pang of guilt as I handed my son over to the nanny. My days were a blur of trying to keep up at work with compromised eyesight, then coming home to a husband who resented me and a child who needed me more than ever. Time slipped by in a relentless cycle of work, childcare, and mounting tension. Family gatherings, already strained, grew worse with Judy's behavior. She'd act as the doting grandmother when others were around, but her detachment was always clear. She'd call our son in a sickly sweet tone, "Come to Grandma." But he, sensing her coldness, would cling to me instead. Judy's mood would sour instantly. "What have you been telling him about me?" she'd accuse, venom in her voice. "You're turning my grandson against me." Exhausted, I tried to explain. "He just doesn't know you well, Judy. Maybe if you visited more." She'd cut me off before I could finish. "Don't you dare blame this on me," she'd snap, then storm off to complain to Bob. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, my life took another unexpected turn. I found myself staring at a positive pregnancy test, the two lines unmistakable. Panic gripped me as memories of my first difficult pregnancy flooded back. Was I strong enough to go through this again? I realized I was already well into my first trimester, and the path ahead seemed set. Trembling, I called Bob at work to break the news. His voice was impatient. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant," I said, my heart racing. After a long silence, Bob finally replied, "Look, Diana, I'm swamped. We'll talk later. Just keep your job. We can afford to lose that income." Then he hung up. I sat there, phone still in my hand, feeling more alone than ever. This pregnancy, though challenging in its own way, was easier than the first. My morning sickness was mild and my vision remained stable. With renewed determination, I kept working, focused on supporting my growing family, despite everything that weighed on me. As the months passed and my belly expanded, the emotional gap between Bob and me seemed to stretch wider. He spent more and more time at his mother's house, often coming home late at night. One evening, I struggled to put our toddler to bed, my body aching with discomfort. When Bob walked in, I felt a flicker of hope for some help. "Can you read him a story?" "I'm really tired," I asked. Bob glanced at us, then checked his watch before sighing. "Can't. I promised Mom I'd help her move some furniture." "Don't wait up." The door slammed shut behind him, and a tear slid down my cheek. I looked at my son, his trusting eyes filled with innocence, unaware of my sorrow. Then I glanced down at my growing belly, my heart swelling with love for the child I hadn't yet met. As my 7th month of pregnancy approached, Thanksgiving was just around the corner. The house started to fill with guests in the afternoon. My parents arrived early, my mom immediately donning an apron to assist in the kitchen. Friends and family crowded in, their laughter and conversation adding warmth to the house. Just as I was finishing setting the table for dinner, the doorbell rang again. It was Nathan, Bob's younger brother, and he wasn't alone. "Everyone, this is Victoria," Nathan announced, his face lighting up as he introduced his fiancée. The room fell momentarily silent before erupting in congratulations. I forced a smile, trying not to let the flicker of envy I felt show. Bob's face brightened at his brother's happiness, and I couldn't help but notice the contrast to my own growing sense of isolation. Judy arrived shortly after, her eyes widening with appreciation when she saw Victoria. "Well, well," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with enthusiasm, "a sight for sore eyes." Throughout dinner, Judy showered Victoria with attention, peppering her with questions and hanging on to her every word. I did my best to focus on being a gracious hostess, but I couldn't help overhearing their conversation. "So, Victoria," Judy said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "Nathan tells me you're a manager at National Bank. How prestigious." Victoria nodded, her discomfort evident. "Yes, I've been there for about 4 years now." Judy beamed. "You must be doing very well for yourself, unlike some people who can only pop out babies and breed poverty," she added, casting a pointed look in my direction. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I felt the sting of her words, but beside me my mother tensed, ready to come to my defense. I gently touched her arm, silently pleading with her to let it go. Judy's voice dripped with false sweetness as she continued. "Victoria here makes $120,000 a month. Now, that's the kind of daughter-in-law I've always dreamed of. Smart, beautiful, successful." Tears welled up in my eyes. I thought about all the years I'd spent working hard to support our family, paying the mortgage, and building the career I was proud of, all of it now seemingly forgotten. "I think we should continue this lovely evening somewhere more suitable," Judy announced, standing up. "Victoria, dear, why don't we all go to that new restaurant downtown? My treat, of course." Before I could process what was happening, Judy, Bob, Nathan, and Victoria were heading for the door. Bob didn't even glance back at me as they left. The remaining guests, sensing the shift in atmosphere, quickly made their excuses and departed, leaving only my parents behind. They offered to help clean up, but I insisted they rest. Finally, alone, I collapsed onto the sofa, tears flowing freely. Time seemed to stand still as I cried, my hand resting gently on my swollen belly. I thought about how my life had spiraled to this point. Dawn was approaching when, 5 days after my emergency C-section, I felt a sudden surge of strength, both physical and emotional. The doctors were impressed with my progress and gave me the green light to leave the hospital. During this time, Bob hadn't called once. Since he left for San Diego, he hadn't asked how I was doing or inquired about our newborn son. It was clear to me now. Our marriage had reached its end. I reached out to my parents, asking if the boys and I could stay with them temporarily. They immediately agreed, offering their full support. While staying with them, I had the chance to rest and recuperate as they lovingly doted on my sons. I began researching divorce lawyers and gathering the necessary financial documents. A week after leaving the hospital, Bob finally called. I ignored the first 3 calls, letting them go to voicemail, but eventually answered the 4th. "Where the hell are you?" Bob demanded, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. Why aren't you at home? I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. I'm at my parents' house with our sons. I filed for divorce. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line before he scoffed. Divorce? Are you kidding me? After everything I've done for you? I felt my anger rise. What I've done? You mean abandoning me right before I gave birth? Or draining our savings? Get over it, he shot back dismissively. I'll pay you back. No problem. In fact, I don't even want to see you again. You know why? Because I'm going to be rich. He ranted about Nathan's new wife offering him a job at the bank, their plans to start a financial company, and how they were going to be incredibly wealthy. You never believed in me, Diana. You always shot down my ideas. Well, guess what? I'm free now, and you? You're just a loser who can't recognize potential when it's right in front of her. The divorce proceedings went surprisingly quickly. Bob didn't contest anything, returned the money he had taken, and agreed to pay alimony. When it came to the house, I had years of mortgage payments logged that proved I had been the primary contributor. The judge awarded me the house without hesitation. The day I moved back in with the boys, the house now officially mine, Bob was there packing up his last belongings. As I entered, holding the baby and with our toddler by my side, he sneered. Enjoy this dump while you can, he spat. I'll be in a mansion soon, swimming in cash. You'll see what you missed. He left, and with his departure, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The house suddenly felt bigger, brighter, like it was finally mine again. A year and a half later, life had settled into a new routine. I had returned to work and found a balance between my career and motherhood. Though it wasn't always easy, my boys and I were happy, healthy, and thriving. One ordinary Tuesday, my phone buzzed with a news alert that made my heart stop. The headline read, Local banker exposed as fraud, leaves family in ruins. The article revealed a shocking scandal. Victoria, Nathan's wife, had been orchestrating an elaborate con. She had convinced Bob, Nathan, and Judy to invest heavily in a non-existent financial company, draining their savings and even mortgaging Judy's house. Victoria had never actually worked at the bank. The office she had shown them was a rented space, a mere facade for her fraud. She vanished with millions, leaving behind nothing but counterfeit documents and shattered dreams. To make things worse, an extra loan had been taken out to cover Nathan and Victoria's extravagant wedding in San Diego, the same event that had prompted Bob to abandon us. As I continued reading, a whirlwind of emotions hit me: shock, confusion, and, I'll admit, a hint of satisfaction. The aftermath was devastating. Unable to repay their debts, they lost everything: home, cars, even personal possessions, taken by creditors. I heard from others that Judy had resorted to working a cashier job just to scrape by enough for a small apartment and basic groceries. Bob and Nathan were in similarly dire straits, their dreams of affluence completely shattered. As I processed the news, a deep sense of relief washed over me. I had divorced Bob just in time, sparing my children and me from the financial ruin that had engulfed my former in-laws. Just when I thought I had moved on, Judy's number flashed on my phone. Despite my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was weak, a stark contrast to her usual commanding tone. We need your help, she began, her words laced with desperation. The children need their father and grandmother, she pleaded, emphasizing the importance of family during these hard times. I took a deep breath, memories of past betrayals flooding back. Thanksgiving alone, being abandoned before giving birth, the constant insults. Family, I echoed, my voice firm. You were concerned about family when you left me alone, pregnant and in peril. You weren't worried about family when you drained my savings or called me a loser. Judy tried to interject, but I cut her off. I'm sorry for your troubles, Judy, but the choices made by you, Bob, and Nathan are not my burden. My children are my priority, and I will not allow your chaos to disrupt our lives. Please don't contact us again. I hung up and immediately blocked her number, feeling a significant weight lift from my shoulders. It was over, once and for all.